Hello, I'm Kathleen, and I want to share a story that has stayed with me for several months. My aim is to shed light on recognizing toxic behavior and the importance of standing up against it. I'm 31 years old, married to my high school sweetheart, Anthony, who is 34. We have a kitten and are preparing to celebrate our 13th anniversary next month. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law, Carol, will not be attending. From the start, Carol had a deep-seated dislike for me. With 2 sons, she had always spoiled them, believing no one was good enough for her boys. Anthony and his older brother, David, were showered with her affection and grew up under her controlling and manipulative shadow. As teenagers, they faced Carol's restrictions on dating, socializing, and even sleepovers. Despite these clear signs of control, they remained infatuated with their mother's love and failed to recognize her manipulative behavior. As David began to rebel, sneaking out and dating girls, Carol's control intensified. She even threatened his then-girlfriend, but David stood firm and defended her. When Carol tried to drive away Lauren, now David's wife, David refused to let her. By the time both brothers reached 15, they began distancing themselves from Carol, which she disapproved of. Anthony saw his brother's actions as excessive but didn't fully grasp the extent of Carol's control. In the early days of my relationship with Anthony, I kept quiet to avoid conflict. However, Carol's attempts to undermine our relationship escalated. She orchestrated a Venice tour during prom week to keep us apart, and despite Anthony's pleas to cancel, it was the one time he stood up to her. Carol's constant barrage of insults and predictions of my unfaithfulness during college took a toll. Her manipulation led to a brief separation, which she celebrated. Anthony eventually reconciled with me, which only fueled Carol's harassment. I tried to address the situation with Anthony, expressing my frustration. Anthony, your mother's behavior is consistently disrespectful. Despite my attempts to be welcoming, she belittles me. You need to address this. Anthony dismissed my concerns, defending his mother, Kathleen. My mother is just protective and fears losing me. She believes she's looking out for my future. Don't take her words too seriously. Frustrated, I pressed on. So you're okay with how Carol treats me? She tried to break us up. Anthony justified Carol's actions as misguided attempts to prevent heartbreak. I challenged him. She used your insecurities to end our relationship. How can you excuse that? Despite my efforts, Anthony remained unconvinced, defending Carol and accusing me of false accusations. Even David's attempts to reason with him were met with resistance, causing tension between the brothers. David eventually married Amy, his high school sweetheart, whom Carol had tried to scare off. Although David invited me to the wedding, he purposely did not inform Carol, causing her distress. Carol urged Anthony to intervene and get her an invitation. Known for his loyalty to his mother, Anthony argued with David about Carol's exclusion. Initially hesitant to support Carol's demands, Anthony faced my challenge, whether boycotting the wedding was justified given Carol's history with David and Amy. I suggested that the situation was a misunderstanding, acknowledging that mothers can sometimes be overbearing. I stressed the importance of family, encouraging everyone to mend bridges and avoid holding grudges. I reminded Anthony that the decision of who to invite was ultimately David and Amy's, and their choices should be respected. Despite my concerns, I planned to RSVP the following day, hoping to influence their decision. I warned Anthony that not attending the wedding might lead to being cut off by David and Amy, as had happened with Carol. After much consideration, Anthony agreed to attend the wedding. I hoped this decision would bring about positive change, allowing David and Amy to enjoy their special day without Carol's interference. They chose to hold the wedding far away to prevent Carol from showing up. However, Carol's reaction was intense. When Anthony showed her the wedding pictures, she broke down in tears and clung to him, insisting on his company for a month. To appease her, Anthony even canceled our planned Colorado trip. Witnessing how he handled the situation left me heartbroken. Although I knew our love was deep, breaking up was no longer an option. My only hope was that Anthony would eventually recognize Carol's troubling behavior. 3 years later, Anthony proposed to me. Carol, though outwardly happy for him, privately refused to give him her engagement ring, convinced I was a gold digger and that our marriage wouldn't last. I loved the ring Anthony chose for me, a symbol of our financial independence as engineers. Carol's jewelry was the last thing I wanted. Planning the wedding became a nightmare, as Carol inserted herself into every detail, from cake tastings to venue selection. Disapproving of my vintage theme, she dismissed it as boring and tacky. Despite my indifference, Anthony and I carefully considered every decision. Frustrated, I confronted him. This is getting ridiculous. We're the ones getting married, and your mom needs to step back. I don't need her input on everything. She hates every decision I make. You need to tell her to back off. Anthony defended his mother, claiming she wanted the best for us. I argued that her interference was unacceptable and that she should have been uninvited from David's wedding due to her past behavior. This was our wedding, and she had already had hers. After much coaxing, Anthony finally asked Carol to give us space. Although she threw a fit, she toned it down somewhat. Unfortunately, Anthony's prioritization of her choices led to several changes in our plans. Initially disappointed, I chose to go along with some adjustments to avoid further conflict. I hadn't yet found the courage to stand up for myself, and Anthony seemed lost in a fog, unable to think clearly. The wedding took another turn for the worse when Carol showed up in a white dress so sparkly and lacy it resembled a bridal gown. Anthony immediately recognized the problem and insisted she change before the ceremony. Carol pretended to be unaware and claimed she didn't have another dress. Luckily, my maid of honor and best friend came to the rescue with a pale blue gown that fit Carol perfectly. Anticipating Carol's intention to wear white, I had purchased a dress for her on my dime. With no excuses left, Carol had to wear the provided dress. During the reception, Carol gave tearful speeches about losing her children to awful women, targeting both me and Lauren, who were avoiding her. She disparaged our relationship, portraying herself as the victimized mother-in-law. The guests, including her own family, looked uncomfortable and mortified. My maid of honor quickly took the microphone to redirect the atmosphere. On our honeymoon, Carol incessantly called us, reaching out to Anthony and crying about her loneliness. She bombarded us with calls, and when she couldn't reach Anthony, she called me, accusing me of taking her son away. Just a month after the wedding, she insisted that no matter what I did, Anthony would always choose her over me, claiming he would never love me more than his mother. Attempting to reason with her was futile. I told Carol that we were on our honeymoon and asked her to stop calling us so frequently. When Anthony's phone died, he went back to our room to charge it, making it clear there was no intention of keeping him away from her. Kathleen, it's clear you're driven by greed. You seem focused on extracting money from Anthony, ignoring the fact that he's been supporting me financially since his father passed away a decade ago. Carol, while it's natural for him to support you, I am financially stable on my own and have no interest in his money. Stop falsely accusing me of exploiting him. Enough with your baseless claims. You might deceive him, but I see through your intentions. Hand over the phone to my husband. I need to speak with him urgently. Throughout our honeymoon, I endured many similar conversations with Carol. When we returned home, her constant crying became a daily struggle because we hadn't taken her along. Even now, she scolded Anthony for going without her. Anthony, as usual, tried to console his mother, disregarding my concerns. I was beginning to find my voice and stand up for myself. Things were relatively stable until a few months ago when I discovered I was pregnant with our first child. We were both thrilled, and Anthony wanted to share the news with Carol immediately. Despite my reservations, I agreed. However, Carol's reaction was anything but joyful. She accused me of trapping Anthony with a baby and insinuated that I had cheated on him. Despite Anthony's efforts to calm her, she remained obstinate. Her dramatic outbursts continued for 3 weeks before she decided to visit us. Carol arrived unannounced, appearing to be happy about the baby and showering me with gifts. Anthony was relieved, thinking that Carol had finally accepted our child. However, I felt uneasy about her sudden change in demeanor and decided to proceed with caution. In the evening, she offered to make us tea, claiming it would warm me up as the weather was getting chilly. Anthony looked triumphant, as if to say, "I told you so." I chose not to ignore my concerns and went to the kitchen to check on Carol. I noticed her preparing tea and adding something from a carton. Both Anthony and I are lactose intolerant and use a specific brand of oat milk for our tea, but Carol was using a different carton. She used oat milk for 1 cup but poured the suspicious carton into the other. Initially, I thought she might be using a different vegan milk for variety, but my unease persisted. When she handed me the suspicious mug, feeling a sudden panic, I impulsively switched my husband's cup with mine when they weren't looking. We drank the tea, and throughout the evening, Carol seemed to smirk at me from across the couch. Fortunately, nothing unusual happened that night. However, early the next morning, I heard Anthony vomiting in the bathroom. He made several trips, and the noise woke me up. After a while, I found him lying on the living room couch in pain. Concerned, I approached him and asked about his condition. Carol emerged from her room, appearing genuinely worried at the sight of Anthony's distress, and began to cry. It suddenly occurred to me that she had used cow's milk in our tea. I was ready to confront her but had to first rush Anthony to the hospital. I called 911, requesting an ambulance for Anthony, who was experiencing severe stomach pain and was on the brink of passing out. At the hospital, we waited for the medication to take effect. When the doctor arrived, I brought Carol along, in front of Anthony and the doctor. I pressured Carol into confessing. Concerned for her son, she eventually admitted to using cow's milk. The doctor expressed disappointment and informed us that Anthony needed to be hospitalized for a day. After the doctors left, Anthony appeared deeply troubled. As clarity returned, he confronted Carol about why she used milk in his tea despite knowing his allergy. He pointed out that their household didn't even have cow's milk and Kathleen didn't consume it either. Carol insisted that she hadn't intended to harm Anthony, claiming she was aware of his allergy. Anthony was bewildered and demanded an explanation. Carol continued sobbing in a corner, prompting me to reveal the truth. I explained that Carol had brought the cow's milk into their home not for Anthony but for me. It was not meant for him, and I had switched their cups when Carol wasn't looking to protect our child's health. Anthony, shocked and in disbelief, accused me of lying. He struggled to understand why Carol would want to harm him and our child. I urged him to ask Carol directly, emphasizing that I had taken steps to ensure our child's safety. Carol's wailing reached such a pitch that a nurse had to escort her out, a move no one contested. Seeing Anthony's distress and trauma, I comforted him as best as I could and took him home. The next day, while he was still in the hospital, I seized the opportunity to change the locks on our house. Anthony called Carol and firmly told her that we were cutting off all contact with her. Her cries and pleas persisted, insisting that as his mother, she shouldn't be severed from his life. Anthony rejected her pleas outright, highlighting how her actions had harmed our family and stating that he would not tolerate it any longer. Carol, realizing that her influence had been recognized, confessed her motivations. She admitted that she sought to hurt me and make me suffer because she felt neglected. Anthony found her actions unforgivable, especially given the potential harm she could have caused. He expressed his disgust and firmly rejected her presence in our lives. We changed the locks to prevent her from entering our home, and when she tried to force her way in, we contacted the authorities. We also blocked her on phones and social media. We informed our extended family about the situation, and their unanimous disapproval further isolated Carol. After discussing her actions and reviewing evidence from security cameras and her confession to the doctor, we successfully obtained a restraining order against her. Despite her attempts to gather information from our family, no one entertained her demands. We withdrew our financial support, prompting her to secure a job at Walmart to support herself. Gradually, we rebuilt our relationship with David and Lauren. Anthony and David resolved their issues through heartfelt conversations, and Lauren and I, already good friends, grew even closer. With Anthony having come to his senses and shielded me from Carol's influence, we eagerly anticipated the arrival of our child. We made an agreement to ensure Carol would not have any relationship with our future family. Enjoying the newfound peace in our home after Carol's departure, we began considering a move to David City after our child's birth. Although uncertain about the future, we remained optimistic that we would face any challenges together.